welcome to maybe the first in a series or a one-off video of, depending on on how much the audience likes this, of me talking to the camera about motorcycling things. Basically, I just have opinions about things, as everyone does, and I'd like to share those thoughts and feelings with you. For the first video in the series, I did want to talk about something that I'm actually pretty passionate about. It is public transportation, which if you're a motorcyclist, you might find that a little bit odd, because look at this. Why would I take public transportation if I have motorcycles? But as you might have seen from the thumbnail and title of this video, I actually think motorcyclists should all embrace public transportation. Not necessarily for ourselves to participate in, although I don't mind taking a train once in a while. Really, it's just for the common good of everybody on a motorcycle or even in a car. And to be honest, I don't really think this should be a controversial take. In many other countries in the world, they have trains and bus routes that are just more substantial than we have here in America. But I think it's high time America maybe go back to what we used to do before we embraced car culture as much as we did, and start providing better public transportation options for people in urban and suburban areas. Let me start by saying that, again, if you are a motorcyclist like myself, you should really embrace public transportation. And the primary reason is that it will get people off of the road, right? That's the entire point here, is that if there are less people in cars and more of them on buses or trains or subways, there will be less people on the roads. There will be less congestion. You'll have to deal with less distracted drivers. It's just a net benefit for you and I. I should also say really quickly that this is not something that people in rural areas have to deal with. So if you live in a small town, an hour and a half, 2 hours away from any type of densely populated area, this just doesn't really apply to you. Public transportation really works in highly densely populated urban and suburban areas. But again, it just kind of makes sense. I don't know how much more I need to explain this concept that if you get more people onto public transportation, the roads will be less full. We had a demo of this, kind of. If you remember during COVID, you might have been somebody who had to travel in and out of work like I did for some time, and the roads were empty. There was essentially no traffic during some of the COVID lockdowns because everybody was working from home. And while that isn't like an exact one-to-one replication, the idea is the same. If you move more people out of their cars and working from home, or get them into a subway train or a train car or a bus, you're just gonna have less people on the roads to deal with. Which means if you're somebody that needs to have a work van or a truck to do your 9-to-5 job, you'd have less, people in a Tesla in one of the many, large SUVs on the road with one person not carrying anybody else on their daily commute into work on the road and kind of out of your way. Obviously, the same goes for motorcyclists, right? Most of these people who are traveling day to day in their cars to go from A to B don't love cars. I know that as a motorcyclist, you probably really enjoy your motorcycle and probably your car, but most people don't give a shit about their car. They really don't. They just have somewhere to go and they need a way to get there. And in America, we kind of just embraced mosquitoes. No, we really embraced, cars as a mode of transportation, and that's really kind of left us in a pretty desperate place. It is quite difficult to get from point A to point B in a lot of places without a car in America. And again, in some places that's necessary, but in a lot of places it's really not. You have a dense enough population center in certain, urban and suburban environments that we should just have better public transportation options. I will say the one argument I hear a lot from people about not liking taking a train or a subway is that they don't like the people on it, which, I'll be completely honest, I do not fully understand. When I went to college, I had to use public transportation because I didn't have a car in college. When I moved to various different cities, I've lived in 4 different major metropolitan areas throughout my life now. I lived in Montreal, Austin, Texas, Boston, and now Baltimore. And I have taken public transportation in all of these cities. And people on the bus and the train are not as scary as you think. This is really a cultural thing, and I think it's honestly one of the biggest barriers to entry is to get more Americans into using public transportation. But to be honest, it's just something we need to normalize. I had not used it much before I went to college and before I lived in these different cities. I grew up in a rural place, and there was no way I could get around with public transportation. I immediately had to get a license when I turned of age, and I used that to get everywhere. So it was something very different for me when I started moving around, but you just kind of get used to it, and it's truly not bad. And to be honest, I'm kind of sugarcoating how much I like taking public transportation here. When I was living in Boston, I lived in Dorchester and I worked in northern Boston. Really, I worked in Cambridge, and I would take the red line from the very bottom to the very top of the line and walk to my office. And it was great. It was the best commute I have ever had. I've had commutes where I've had to drive 30 or 40 minutes. This was about a 45-minute train ride. It took about 5 or 10 minutes to walk from my door to get to the train and then to get to the train to the office. And it was hands down the best commute I've ever had. Not having to think about traffic and leaving at a specific time so you miss traffic or whatever is just so great. The trains were frequent enough that I didn't really have to think about what time I arrived at the station. And the T is, as much as people complain about it in Boston, should really not be complaining, because in many other states and many other cities, Austin, Texas, it's far worse. And when I was living in Austin, I wish there was some type of metro system that was half as good as the one in Montreal or DC or Boston, because it made it so much easier to commute. And again, I know this might sound crazy because I ride a motorcycle, so I obviously enjoy the freedom that it gives me to go wherever, you know, to go places like this, right? But I just don't think it should be controversial. Even if you don't want to take public transportation or don't like public transportation, lots of people would take it if they had it available. And that means there would be less people on the road for you and I to have to deal with while riding our bikes. And honestly, I think a lot of the people who would choose public transportation are the types of drivers that you don't want on the road. It's people on their phones who rather not be having to operate a vehicle to get from point A to point B. Those people clearly do not give a about driving a car, right? If you really care about your car and driving a car, you aren't buying a Kia Sorento or whatever, and, you know, doing on your phone while you're getting from home to work every day. Like, the people I'm describing, you know exactly who I'm talking about. They're weaving, they're going fast, they're going slow, they're unpredictable, and then as soon as you pass them, you look at them and they're on their phone. It's like, you want to strangle them. It's absolutely infuriating. That person should just not be operating a car, and there's more and more of those people every day. So anyway, I hope this was interesting for you. I'll leave some links in the description about why I, you know, that help support my ideas about public transportation and why it would be good for you and I, the motorcycling public, to, you know, to our hobby and our enjoyment. But yeah, so if you have thoughts and feelings about this, which I'm sure you do, please leave them in the comments below. I'm sure we're gonna have a very intelligent, very polite, very cool and chill dialogue. Everybody's gonna be super respectful down there, and I'm sure there will be no problems or deleted comments. That will not happen. If you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. This is not my usual type of content, but I'm kind of experimenting just because I do like to talk about things. So I'd like to share it with my audience, and I'd like to reach a new audience. And if you're a like-minded individual who understands the benefits of public transportation to motorcyclists, hit subscribe. I'm doing a lot of test ride videos and trying out new kinds of motorcyclings. I just picked up this dirt bike and I took it on its first ride to Show Force in Pennsylvania the other day. It was a blast. I had a super fun time. Go check out that video if you'd like. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Until next time, peace, keep tools down. I'll see you later. Whoa. Oh man, she's caked in mud.